Hello and welcome to the Hitout. I am your host, Phoenix Trinidad. This is Zero Hangers weekly podcast about AFL, everything happening in the footy world. And this week, we are unfortunately talking about where Melbourne are at. That's very upsetting for me. We're talking about which players can we see as future coaches. We play Footy Stonks. We'll explain that later. And we go through the 25 under 25 brackets. So lots to play out, lots to talk about. Let's get to it. We're back again. Welcome, Mitch, Callum, Darren. Welcome to the Hitout. This is the first time you've been on the Hitout.
I know, we've got another name.
Yeah.
This is my third episode, and I think it's our third name.
Yeah.
So we're on track. We're doing well here.
This podcast is evolving. We bought some plants while you were gone as well. As you can see,
Nice.
I put out a TikTok asking people to name them, and so we have Planthony Kudaficus on my right. And I haven't decided on the one for that one, but I thought it was pretty good.
Ned Leaves or
Ned Leaves.
Leaf McInnes.
Leaf
good.
McInnes.
I like those
Yeah.
ones.
Is that because they're the ones that you pitched?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to it, shall we? So first thing on the rundown, I'm throwing to you, Callum, because I definitely didn't put this in here, but where are Melbourne at?
Well, where are Melbourne at? It's been a curious start to the year, hasn't it? I mean, they were pretty competitive against the Giants, but they've really fallen away since two effectively 10-goal losses to two teams that finished in the bottom six last year in North Melbourne and Gold Coast. You wonder about what the issues are with the team now. I know you're struggling to sort of hear this stuff, but so far to start the season, the forward line that was meant to emerge has really struggled to kick some goals. You got Van Rooyen's only kicked 3 goals in 3 games. Fritch's only kicked the 1 goal. Their leading goal kickers right now is Cade Chandler and Christian Petrarca, and they've only got 4 goals. So there's no one really standing up at the moment in the forward line. And then there's the midfield at the moment. I know it's hard listening right now, Phoenix. I apologize for starting off with this, but they lost the clearance count by 12, 12, and 16. So is that midfield mix working? It's an interesting debate at the moment whether they change it up. So just curious what everyone's sort of thinking about where Melbourne are at. Is it time to head into maybe a rebuild phase, a little rebuild? Or
You'd hope it's not a rebuild phase because they haven't got their first pick this year, which is a bit of a problem. So Essendon will be happy on that front. I was probably going to save some of this discussion for our new segment, Footy Stonks, but I might actually just touch on most of it here with the midfield group's obviously been the big problem. Like their forward line efficiency has been a problem for years, and they just don't have the cattle.
Well, in our premiership year, the forward line wasn't great.
Fritch
like
Ben
Brown
Brown was really
Thomas
stepping
Donald.
up. It was kind of a weird mix that really just gelled when it needed to. Whereas now, not only is the forward line, and I like the names on paper, like Van Rooyen is going to be a great forward if he isn't looking to be already, but he struggled to just have that impact when. And what this is all coming down to this year is the ball movement and the entries and the looks that the midfield are giving their forwards as well. Like it's probably both ends now that's really hurting them. So yeah, for me, and I'll touch on a little bit more later in the show, but I think what I'll get into in depth here is I think the midfield's going to be okay, and I think where they don't have that dynamic edge at the moment when they've got the 3 bulls in Oliver, Petrarca, and Viney. They just don't have maybe that extra little run. Like Petrarca's obviously not at 100% just yet. He'll get there, but he's not there just yet. You could say similar stuff about Clary, but his form's been up and down so far this season, but we've seen some good stuff from Oliver already. But I think they get Cozzy back this week. So I think if they want to throw him in the midfield, that's definitely going to be an option for them. And just what he can offer as a point of difference. And Trent Rivers is the other one, a player that they wanted to play in midfield over the weekend, but can't at the moment because McVee's sidelined and Caleb Wins is sidelined and Xavier Lindsay went down in the first 5 minutes. So I think when you have those two rolling through the midfield as a point of difference player, it probably just allows Petrarca to still play forward. And you can run one of those guys in the midfield, and then when Petrarca is in the midfield, and then Clary's getting a break, and you just get a bit more of that shape-shifting engine room. So I think it's going to turn when they get some of these guys back. So Windsor back this week, Cozzy back from his suspension. McVee will be a couple of weeks, I'm sure, still. And then Lindsay, thankfully, not a long-term setback. So once they have all those guys fit and ready, they can roll a Rivers and a Pickett through, and I think that's going to help.
There's the other, I guess, the unknown or unmeasurable factors. I mean, look at the numbers. I think their last 5 quarters have been outscored by, I think it's 103 points or something like that. So final quarter v North where it blew out, and then the belting on the weekend. Now the Gold Coast, midfield big four, if you will, is just about the best in the competition at that. If you put Anderson, Rowell, Flanders, who's underrated, and Touk Miller in there, that's a very, very good group that can compete with what Melbourne had. Petrarca was the key one. So they lost control of the game early, and then it got right away from them in the third quarter with Petrarca forward. Now, you would think that in case of emergency break glass, he goes back into the middle simply because they're getting smashed in there and they can't go forward. When it went forward a couple of times, he kicked a couple of special goals, one on the left where he played on and looked really sharp. But they really needed him in both of those spots, and that's a bit of a pointer to him clearly not being 100%, that he wasn't able to go in there. And for the Ds, reflecting on that flag year, I mean, those names on paper forward, as you say, weren't too bad. I mean, a Brown, McDonald forward line, when they're up and about as talls, with Fritsch, who looks completely out of sorts at the moment, dropped a couple of sitters on the weekend, that can get covered over by a dominant midfield. But if your midfield is battling, then that really does get exposed. But yeah, the unknown commodities are the constant speculation, I guess, around things that are said at Melbourne. The stuff last week with Goodwin at the presser, talking about Max Gawn. Now they're good mates, but Max Gawn was probably caught off a little bit like that. Max Gawn calling out leaders, then all of the other stuff around the disengagement late last year. It really is difficult to measure where they're at in their own heads at present.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the rebuild has actually already started. Like, we gave up our first pick this year, but if you look at our drafting over the past
you got Lindsay
2 years.
and I think Lindsay, you got Langford and then Lindsay, and Lindsay's the pick you got off Essendon. He could easily have been a top 5 prospect for this year. Yeah, looking at the quality of both draft classes, obviously a lot to play out in 2025. But yeah, like, it's not like the trade was a big issue. It might just look a little ugly when it potentially becomes a top 4 pick. But no, and then you had successive years of multiple first-round selections when you got Windsor and Tholstrup the year before. So the youth is there. McVeigh, I've got higher raps on as well. And there's a few others that are young and still coming through and well before their peak. So I think the list is okay for that long-term look. It's going to be quite fascinating if they do hit the big red button, given what we've kind of had seen with Melbourne's off seasons the last 2 years and how drastic and dramatic that could be.
I do think it's literally just form. Like, it's the fourth round.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Fourth round.
We played 3 times.
It's just form. We learnt a new game plan in the off season. I'm giving it 2 more games, and then I'll have a funeral if we're still
two more things on this. I wanted to say the North Melbourne performance was a mulligan. Obviously, the Gold Coast one doesn't help that, but we don't really know how good Gold Coast could be this year.
Given
how good that,
North are also top 4.
Like, exactly. Like, we could be saying at the end of the year, you know what? Fair enough that Melbourne fell to Gold Coast, like that Gold Coast side at the end of the year. You got to also remember 2 weeks before they just lost to GWS, and everyone has them as a grand final threat at this point in the season. The other one as well is Andrew McGualter leaving at the timing, like how long Melbourne probably had to wait and how long it took West Coast to make that decision probably didn't help them. Like, they got Nathan Jones in, that's helpful, but they probably just had to tread water a little bit too long on a midfield coach. It's going to be so important. Like, the players they've got are great, but you still need those good assistant coaches. So that probably would have bitten them a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I'm also not sold on, as much as I love Nathan Jones, I'm not sold on him as a assistant coach just yet.
He's certainly raw,
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, well, I'm going to put a pin in that one because it's very upsetting to me.
Be back next week.
Okay, moving on to Hawks and Lions. Darren, they've got it.
Yeah, they've got it. I guess it's that self-belief to win from anywhere. I mean, Hawthorn, the expectation went up on them because of how strong they were at the back end of last year. They've handled that perfectly. And Brisbane, 32 points down again on the weekend. So of their last 6 wins, so the last 3 finals last year and the first 3 games this year, they've been more than 20 points down in 5 of those 6 games. The outlier is the grand final where they conceded the first 2, but then dominated the game from there on in. Obviously, the Geelong and Giants finals last year in particular, 28 and 44. And this year, 32 points down on the weekend, 21 behind Sydney and 25 behind the West Coast Eagles last week, which was a bit of a shock. So I'd say Brisbane have only been going at 60 or 70% this season in terms of their best footy. But they've got that self-belief to win from everywhere, which really grew through the finals. And Hawthorn, that Giants game was unusual because of the wind in the first half, where it was 35 points down at quarter time and in front at half time. But when that changed, so in the first half there were 11 goals kicked with the wind and none against it. Only 2 goals kicked with a breeze in the second half and 6 against the wind, including Hawthorn kicking 4 in a row in the third quarter. So when it turned back into what you might term a normal game, Hawthorn were able to control that arm wrestle, and that's a really, really strong win for them against a Giants team that, as we say, we expect to contend. So both of those teams at the moment look the most resolute in those tight situations in games and probably deserve to be 1 and 2 seed in whatever order you pick, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No notes. Yeah. No, I think another thing too is that both those teams have had shorter preseasons compared to the rest of the competition. So them going at 60 to 70% is probably just them having that 2 weeks behind the other teams. Although Lions were meant to play, were they one of the
supposed to play
games?
Geelong. This game that they played on Saturday was supposed to be the opening round. In fact, the opening game on Thursday.
Yeah, probably be pretty happy with that in the end. Like as difficult as that week would have been for them, to have that extra week of prep and fine tuning for the season ahead's pretty good. And they're both, I think the big good thing for both of these clubs, they're not at their full best side yet. Like the Hawks have a few to come back, and Cal Shadir, Mitch Lewis, just to name a couple for their forward line, and then the Lions get a player like Tom Doedee back at some point this season. Darcy Gardner recently came back through the VFL. So while they might not be walk-ups into the best 23, they're certainly going to get that internal selection competition, which is always what you want to have when you're contending, is that if they do face injury setbacks like all teams do, that they've got those guys ready and can just slot straight in if they're not competing for the starting spot already.
I think one of the other things with this, it's not a negative point, but what'll be interesting to watch is teams that peak at the wrong time in the season. So they haven't quite peaked. They're sort of still figuring it out. They're going 67% and still nutting out wins. But I just feel like either of these teams could maybe peak around the wrong time and then just start falling off. Right?
Potentially. I mean, Richmond. I always look at Richmond as a prime example of that a few years ago, where 2017 and 19 they peaked beautifully. 2018 they were coming back down the other side when they hit the finals and slipped up. So it is crucial when it happens.
Similar to Melbourne in their post premiership, I think in 2022, where we won the first 10 games or whatever, and then we just blew out.
I think Stephen May injury, and then that whole Jake Melksham May fiasco probably just all came,
still made it to finals and then straight sets,
like
but
12 and 13-0 start's going to get you there pretty easily. But the second half was a concern, and then the form just didn't rekindle.
All right, cool.
Cool.
No notes. All right. Next thing, Callum, which current players could be future coaches?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what everyone thinks about this. Just from my own team's perspective, Hawthorn, I reckon Jack Gunston looks good for at least a development coach role. You saw the impact that he's had on Cal Shadir in his first season. He really wasn't expected to play much more than Box Hill VFL level for the first couple of seasons, but he instantly made an impact with that. I mean, they both lost their fathers, unfortunately, so they had that sort of emotional bond, but then again, the skill development that Gunston's been able to help through that has been quite impressive. So I think he definitely could be lined up for a role there. Not sure if he genuinely is or not, but I think he definitely could work in that. I think just from players in general, I really like Wiedering as a leader. I feel like he could be a good coach. I don't know why. He gives off that vibe for me. So interesting what everyone else thinks.
I'll be honest, Wiedering to me doesn't give off the vibe of someone that's like super smart, but footy smarts maybe.
Maybe footy smarts, yeah.
I think it's just tall guys just don't. Sorry, no offense, but they don't give off that vibe.
Going off pretty much the two clubs you mentioned, it's like Sam Mitchell was always touted as a future coach, like during his playing days, so smart and intelligent, and obviously that's paying off already. Like what we're seeing is what many had predicted. Steve Johnson was another one who in his playing days everyone thought would probably be a pretty good senior coach. He was a good assistant. I think he's done pretty well at the local level, but maybe he didn't want to take that next step, don't know. But on Hawthorn, I think Mitchell said, I think it was last week, about Carl Amon, and how he usually goes to him sometimes at quarter time breaks just to see how he's seeing the game. And he's another one that looks like a great mentor for some of the younger players in that Hawks list. And then for the Blues, Sam Docherty and Nick Newman were two that came to mind. Nick Newman already doing a little bit of coaching and work with the women's program, and with his time on the sidelines this year is doing a bit for the Blues. And then Docherty as well. You go to training at the Blues and you always see him pulling players aside, one-on-ones and just kind of helping them and some of the younger guys. So they're two to mind. Scott Pendlebury's a bit of an obvious one, but he's going to be quite a fascinating one with, I think he said before he doesn't want to go straight into coaching. Like he wants to
he's coaching now.
Well, yeah, he is, but he's at Haileybury under Matthew Lloyd. I think he said he's probably going to have like a year away from football, do what he wants to do after retirement. And then he's also got a budding media career as well. So he's got a decision to make there. So there's some that came to mind. Pendle's probably one of the more obvious, but yeah, some of them maybe, lesser known options, I think, around the competition.
Yeah, it's interesting with Gunston. So he's played under Clarkson, Mitchell, Fagan, who are all part of the same system, which has obviously generated a lot of successful coaches. You look at smart natural footballers or football heads, like Matty Rowell seems someone who's like totally engrossed in the game. Jordan Dawson, for whatever reason, I get that vibe from him at the Crows that he would be a pretty good, he's obviously a leader there anyway. Yeah. And then you tend to gravitate to defenders a little bit. I don't know, it's the way they see the game. Or I look at my own club, someone like a Cal Wilkie, looks at like intelligent footballers who make good decisions, they're disciplined, they speak well, those types. So some of the successful coaches of recent times from defence, Chris Scott, Damien Hardwick, those sorts of players that were more defensively minded. So, yeah, maybe there's an element of that in it.
Yeah. Max Gawn will 100% be a ruck coach at some point. I think he's already, back in the day when we had Jackson on the list, I remember him speaking a lot about taking Jackson under his wing. It seemed pretty obvious. But yeah, no, there are some good names. I actually have some first-hand experience with being coached with Pendles when I was back at the Rookie Media Academy. Yeah.
Oh, for real.
I mean, he wasn't really coaching me, but I just saw him in action as a coach, like mostly with junior academy players and stuff. But it's good to see. He has a very football brain, which I don't think anybody doubted.
No. Were you aware that he had a basketball background?
Yeah, maybe that's where his footy brain came from.
I mean, it's all coming together.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Sweet.
Get into some stonks.
Footy Stonks. I shouldn't make a sting for this or something, or like a little intro thing. I'm going to make an intro for this.
So we're just cutting that bit out and you're just putting the intro after that? Or
me saying all this?
Is the intro coming after this?
No, this is all part of the intro.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that was a great thing.
Footy Stinks. Footy Stonks.
Sometimes it does.
It does stink. Yeah, that was subconscious. Footy Stonks, Mitch.
Yeah, I'll explain this. Yeah, so we thought it'd be pretty fun, probably maybe first episode of every month, that we kind of come back to footy assets that we're going to put some shares into. So you might look at a player who's probably maybe flying under the radar, and you want to kind of give them a little tap and put some shares into them. And then when we come back in a month's time, you can kind of be a bit like I told you so. Could certainly go the other way though, and you're kind of backing in something to change and something to really rise over the next month, and it just blows up. So it's going to be quite an interesting watch. So ideally, 3 each that we want to put some shares into. And you can look at the low price, or you could go for the blue chip guys and just back Nick Dacos to the hills, or a Sam Darcy. To be fair though, if you put some shares pre-season on Sam Darcy, that might have been still pretty decent investment. So that's the kind of conversation we'll have here. And then, like I said, we'll come back once a month to see how everyone's stocks are doing.
Yep.
And at the same time, just if you want to, we can short maybe one.
Yeah.
So, and again, it doesn't have to be a player or a coach. It can be stuff outside of footy, because I don't think we need to be shorting players all too much.
Yeah.
But we can kind of have a bit of fun. So I'll get started. I've kind of got 3 different ones. One is a player who I'm not really sure like what kind of attention he gets from the usual footy fan. I think Crows fans will know just how good this kid is. But Jake Saligo, I'm buying shares in. He's had a fantastic start to the year, and coming off some solid couple of seasons already at the Crows. But he's going to be their number one man quite quickly, I think. Put him alongside Jordan Dawson and Sid Draper and James Peatling in the years to come. But I think he's going to be the man. So look, a month he might not grow too much from where he is already at the moment, but he's a big long-term investment for me. Another one, probably a lot lesser known, who I've liked off the back of his debut in a couple games late last year and some good form early this year, is Essendon's Archie Roberts. So quite low price, I'd like to think, with where I'm buying him at. And I think he's in for a nice second season at the Bombers. So he's my second one. And then, as mentioned earlier in the show, I'm actually going to put some shares into Melbourne's midfield. I don't think their price could be much lower than what it is right now, but what we kind of discussed earlier in the show and the kind of players that they might get to add to that group. is why I'm going to put
So
some.
who's counted in Melbourne's midfield then? Just
Well,
anyone
yeah.
that
So
runs through the
it's just
midfield?
kind of how that performs. So we've seen the numbers that have been quite glaring for them to start the season. I think it might not turn immediately, and then that's all part of the investment. But I think at some point this year it's going to turn around, and maybe in a month's time, hopefully, we're looking at Melbourne's midfield a bit differently, and my shares are skyrocketing.
Okay.
We'll get to the shorts at the end. Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So that's
Callum?
my next. Oh, first share I'm buying in is a little known man at Richmond called Seth Campbell. I don't know how. I think I'd say he's pretty lowly priced to start off with, but his first 3 games of 2025, they've slipped under the radar, of course, because Richmond have been pretty average after their first win. But he's kicked 2 goals, 2 goals 3, and 3 goals 2. He's only 20 years old as well, so this is his second or third year, I think, and he's finding the scoreboard in a poor team that's not really finding the scoreboard much. So imagine if Richmond begin to improve over the next couple of seasons potentially, then I can see him rising up with that and becoming a pretty well-known player for his ability to hit the scoreboard. So I'm investing in him there. I'm also going to back one of Hawthorn's, Cam McKenzie. I've loved him since we drafted him. I mean, everyone's sort of pointing it out now. He looks like and plays like Sam Mitchell. And I saw that one his draft. I was like, is these Sam Mitchell's highlights or is this another guy? And he's living up to the hype like now. It's starting now. I think, he's had that slow grind to get into the system that a few players have had to go through when they're a top draft pick. They're not always Nick Dacos and they start off straight away. But he had 30 disposals against the Giants. He's averaging 21.5 for the season. He's been on the fringes for a couple of years now, and I think maybe he's a bit past that now. I think he should forge himself into the team. Whether if Warple comes back in and he's the one that rotates through off the interchange, or if he stays in there. But I think he's one to look out for. And then final one that I'm going to buy in is Gold Coast, maybe a bit of a blue chip one because they've got the highest percentage at the moment. They're 2-0, but I don't see them being worse than 5-1 after this month. They've got I think they could lose maybe to Adelaide or maybe lose to Sydney, but I reckon they win one. They bank one of those wins, mainly because they're at home and they're pretty good at home. And then they've got Richmond and North Melbourne at gather round. So I'm pretty confident in them, and I'm going to buy into them.
Yep. Who you buying, Daz?
On the Bulldogs more broadly, in the sense that we did the review of them last year. They were top 2 offensively and defensively. They've had a stack of players out to start the year. Strong performance in round 1 against an improving North. They were certainly gallant against Collingwood in a game that could have gone either way. And they weren't at their best against Carlton, but were able to run them down and were full of run late in the game and were certainly finishing strongly. So I think they've got, with the likes of Bontempelli and Waitman and Treloar and a few others still to come back in, chances to get better. So I think they're still not underrated, but people look at them with a bit of caution because they can be a bit up and down in the home and away season. But if there's a consensus that Hawthorn, the Giants and Brisbane are the top 3 seeds, there's quite a few sides fighting for seed number 4, like Collingwood, like Adelaide, like Gold Coast. But I think the Bulldogs are one of those teams as well. So be buying them. One of their young stars, Sam Davidson, only his 3rd game, but they don't win without him on Friday night. 31 possessions, something like 9 clearances. And the night before, Nate Caddy at the Bombers, he's progressed pretty nicely since he came in towards the back end of last year and looks to have a bit of an appetite for footy. Obviously, we saw in that interview where he singled out Nick Rewalt and said, I want to have a chat. And then in the background, you can see them yakking. That's obviously a player who wants to learn and a player who wants to get better. And I think he's made a bit of a difference to the Bombers, relatively young forward line. So I buy from him.
Yep. I'm playing it pretty safe based on, as a D's fan, as a Tottenham fan, I think I just need some security, some safety in my life in terms of investments. I'm just going to buy Libba this week, just blue chip Libba. He's just killing it. When does Bontempelli come back?
It's kind of interesting. I think they've said 3 to 5 more weeks.
Yeah, so I think his stocks are just going to grow. So I'm just going to buy Libba for now.
It's safe.
Yeah.
It's like buying stocks in Bunnings or something. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Can you buy? Is Bunnings a publicly traded
I
company?
don't
We don't
know.
need to go
I'm
into
not
this.
like this is the
Yeah.
only stock stuff I know.
You came up with the segment.
Yeah, I know. I don't know much about it. I think, and then this is kind
Moneyball.
of this kind of Moneyball, and then this kind of like I think shorting. Like I don't know everything about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Watch dumb.
So you're
money.
betting on something to lower
to kind
in
of
value.
to kind of go down in value. So like we're not going to put it against players really. To just hopefully that there's a player who underperforms. We're not Essendon and Carlton fans at the moment. So yeah, you're kind of just looking at something that you think's going right at the moment, or that seems to be going right at the moment, and maybe it's a bit of an illusion that you think, you know what? To be fair, I think that's going to fall away, or it could go the other way, and there's a lot of attention on something, and maybe you think that fades. And mine's probably the latter at the moment. I think some of the attention and scrutiny on Bevo is going to fall away. I think we said in our kind of pre-season show that his first 6 weeks, particularly after the Bont injury, could really stack up against him with the clubs that were coming up against, the players he had unavailable. But to be fair, their start has been very impressive. Like just falling to Collingwood and being that shy of a 3-0 start is fantastic. So Fremantle this week is going to be quite interesting to see how they stack up against the Dockers, who haven't been their best either. But I think I'm going to start shorting the attention and scrutiny on Bevo. I think that's going to go the other way soon.
Yeah. And I think part of that has actually been very well played by the Dogs media, because I think Bevo's been fronting up to the media more, and I think that has helped his case
A little bit,
lot.
yeah. He's also been quite happy in his press conferences a little bit, a few jokes here and there post game. So he's been I've really liked what he's been able to manage through the start of the season. So really could have gone either way. I could have put stock straight into Bevo, but I've kind of just go the other way and put a bit of attention on how much we're really going to be talking about his future over the next few weeks. I think it's going to die down a little bit.
Yeah. Callum, who you shorting?
I'm shorting St Kilda.
Love it.
2-1 start, beat Geelong at Marvel, which is probably the main one, but they lost pretty poorly to Port Adelaide. Oh, it was Adelaide. They're going to face Port Adelaide this week. And then they dismantled Richmond, but I think that's pretty expected for a lot of teams, except if you're Carlton. So they've got a tough month ahead this month. If we're going month by month, I'm for sure shorting on St Kilda. They got Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, where we saw they did pretty poorly against Adelaide. I know Port Adelaide aren't as good as the Crows at the moment, but Adelaide Oval might be a bit of a threat to St Kilda. Then they've got the Giants. Then they've got the Bulldogs, so 2 teams in really good form. And then they've got the Lions, so that's the reigning premiers. So even if they're playing at 60 to 70%, Brisbane come down to Marvel. I think they won a couple games there last year. So 4 very tough games. I'll take back my word on it if they win 2 or more of those games. I think if they
You'll lose your investment, yes.
Yeah, I'll lose my investment if they win 2 or more games. I'll be happy to admit I got that one wrong, but I would be pretty surprised.
Yeah. Daz, are you now shorting Callum? Because
No, that is a tough month. I think they've got to win it at least one. I mean, 3 and 4 is salvageable. I mean, they're 2-1 now, so they win 1, they go 3 and 4. Obviously, if they win 2, they're in a pretty healthy position. But yeah, a lot will be determined in that next month. Mine's similar to the Mitch's in media scrutiny. So not so much scrutiny, but I think, and I know we all work in the media, but we're not the stars of it. We're in a privileged position where we get to talk about the stars of the game, and that's a really enjoyable thing to do. But I think too many media organisations pump up the journalist versus player, journalist versus journalist, top 10 journalist moments, spats at press conferences. I think they extremely overestimate how much the public care about that type of stuff. Like whether this journalist has a grudge against this other journalist, no one cares. So I just get the feeling that people that are thinking they're almost as big as the stars, or that the media are some of the stars in the game, you're not. You're very good at what you do, and we're in a privileged position, but it's not about us. Yeah, would be my advice.
You and I have very similar investment strategies. But I'm specifically shorting the Channel 7 Kane Corns combo. And I know you don't like to name media personalities or journalists or whatever, but I think you can literally see the investment that Channel 7 are putting into Kane Corns and the amount of exposure he's getting. And I just think it's already week 5 of the year, or round 4, whatever it is. And it is already way too much. He's just so overexposed.
Yeah, well, he's got the 9 to 7 move. I haven't seen much change in that regard, except for what he's on, but he's now AFL.com a little bit more, and he's SEN. So he's one of the hardest workers. I'll give him that. He's one of the hardest workers.
His weekly schedule, I have no idea how he's just always on a plane.
Yeah, it was it last week? I think I heard him speaking, and he was like, I had he had the Wednesday night off, but he ended up on the front bar. So he's just like always, he's invested in his craft.
Yeah.
And he's take it how you want. I don't mind him. Don't always agree, and I think that's the whole point. I think it's how much his quotes and stuff are written down and presented everywhere else that is probably more my issue in anything.
I think it's more for me, it's more an audience fatigue thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I
think if you're not listening to him, you're still probably everywhere. I mean, that's probably, I don't listen to him too much, I'd say.
Yeah.
But you still, whatever he says is published or written, which he doesn't exactly have control of.
Yeah.
But it's just all part of the caper. So yeah, mixed feelings, but I can understand the short.
Yeah, I actually like a lot of his takes, but then it's pretty 50-50, but it's just it's more the exposure.
That's the point.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, moving on.
Cool. We'll see how they go next month.
Footy Stonks.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, we'll and then we'll weigh up everybody's portfollios and see who has the best portfolio.
And obviously, if any fans want to comment theirs, who they want to put their shares into, by all means, we're keen to see if we pick up some comments and we can see how they go in a month's time as well.
Yeah, buy shares in Phoenix Trinidad. All right.
I'll short that.
Okay, so next thing on the rundown, the Zero Hanger under 25 bracket. So this has been going on our socials
for about a week. Yeah. So we went up, put a bracket up. March Madness at the moment, bit of fun. So we looked at we looked at 32 of the best players born this century, so 25 and under, to create our under 25 bracket. So all voting done on our Instagram stories, and voting again will be live from Tuesday night this week. So we had our first round of the 32, and now we're into the Sweet 16, most call it. So you can go onto Zero Hanger's Instagram to look at the full bracket, and Facebook as well, to see how the first round panned out. So maybe we'll just look at the matchups for the Sweet 16, and then I'll see if you guys have a tip on who you think what is going to win. So this week's matchups, we have Nick Dacos against Connor Rozee, Nick Blakey against Nazire Wangan-Miller, Tom Green against Errol Gould, a nice little Sydney bash there. Will Day against Chad Warner. And then on the other side of the bracket, we have Caleb Sarong against John Newcomb, Harry Sheasel against Isaac Rankin, Bailey Smith against Sam Darcy, and Finn Callahan against Zach Butters. So obviously a lot of midfielders made it through to the next group. And it's going to be quite interesting to see if the love for Nick Dacos outweighs the hate for Nick Dacos / Collingwood fans. So Connor Rozee managed to knock off Sam Walsh in the first round. So it's going to be quite an interesting matchup as well. So who are we thinking is going to make it through to the end? Because obviously, a player like Nick Dacos is probably the number one seed, if it's not maybe Sam Darcy. Yeah. But then obviously the strong Collingwood faithful might pull through and get into the end. Whereas, there's the counter to that people just don't want him to take out the top spot, and they might just go for whoever he's up against. So who are we seeing as the favourite for this one, or who do we think we would like to see is the championship matchup?
Yeah, I think Darcy goes a fair way on those stocks. Some of them are going to be really interesting, that the players that play effectively the same role, like you mentioned, Blakey versus Wangan-Miller, the rebounding defender, creator player, and then even the age of some of them. So was it Isaac Rankin?
Rankin up against Sheasel this week.
Yeah, so different players there. You've got one who's the sort of creative defender versus the dynamic, more offensively minded player. So I'm really keen to see how those contrast one goes. If you ended up with Dacos versus Darcy, that settles our argument from last week a little bit as well. So
Yeah, I think Dacos is definitely going to be up there. I think because he's got the left side of the bracket, and I think he's got the easier route. Like if we're talking, some people have, in March Madness, some people get the really difficult routes through to success.
Yeah.
I think
it's easy because he's Nick Dacos.
It is easy because he's Nick Dacos, but I would have been interested to see if he came up against Harry Sheasel or Sam Darcy before he got to the final.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to breeze through to that top two, and that's what I'm on the right hand side. That's what I'm curious about. Making the top two would be Darcy or Sheasel for me. But then again, the Rankin versus Sheasel, they're different players, so some people might value Rankin more. So, the recency bias at the moment is going to go towards Sam Darcy, just because he's blown up and broken out, and everyone's talking about him. So I can expect him to push through. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's why I was fascinated over the weekend. We had Finn Callahan against Matt Rowell. And I think that post was still live as Rowell put together a pretty big performance, but it's still swayed to Callahan 52% to 48%. So it was a close one. And yeah, it's going to be, looking at some of the roads. So like on one side, one of Sarong, Newcombe, Sheasel or Rankin will make a semi-final. Not the biggest market players, whereas, the other pocket, you might have a Butters and a Sam Darcy or Bailey Smith. Yeah. Another one, you've got Chad Warner or Errol Goulden with a Will Day or Tom Green. And then in Dacos's corner, Rosie, he'll be coming up against Rosie this week, and then either Blakey or Wanganeen Miller. So that's going to be quite an interesting one. But he might have a pretty comfy road to the semi-final. So yeah, voting again will be live for the Sweet 16 this week, and that'll go through the next couple of weeks before we figure out who's number one.
I think I commented this on the Instagram post, but this is how I found out that Nick Blakey is under 25.
He's
even Bailey Smith. I've raised my eyes and I'm like,
yeah,
still pretty young. Yeah.
No, but I just mean on looks. Like if you told me that Nick Blakey was under 25,
he's 12 in lizard years, so that's why he's right. able to be in this.
So genuinely, like I thought he was over 40. Like just
he's been. It feels like because he's just been day one. He was in the side, and then all Australian and whatnot. He does seem like the oldest of this group. But I think obviously the 2018 draft is the oldest draft in this crop. So that's your Walshes, your Rosies, your Butters, Blakey was 18 or 19. I can't remember which one. But yeah, there's a few that there's none from last year's draft, which is probably fair enough. And then Harley Reid, I think. Who did he get knocked out by? Sheasel in the first round. So so he was, I think, one of the youngest, if not the youngest in the group. So yeah.
Yep. Cool.
All
right, we'll see who wins. Next up, we are going to Gather Round.
We are.
Yeah.
How good?
Yeah, we're going to be here. And this time we are, okay, so this time we're driving. Last year we flew.
Road trip.
And now we're spending a lot more time together.
Yeah.
And we've decided to drive.
3 extra days of with the
just
driving days, and then it's going to be fun.
Yeah, so if anybody has any tips on how to deal with that with a coworker for like 7 days straight, I would love to hear that.
And a coworker like me as well.
Yeah.
Or if anyone wants to keep us company in the car ride over or back, we'll give them
a lift.
Or also just what is, because I'm still not. We haven't really figured out what the route is we're going or what there is to see along.
We want to stay over, stop somewhere for an hour or two.
Yeah. Like, Darren, for some reason, I just assume you've driven from Melbourne to Adelaide at some point.
Once or twice. I know you generally go through Horsham and sort of just keep heading up that way. You can go up through Portland if you want and see some of that side of town.
What's there to see there?
The beach.
Not a lot, to be honest.
A little beach. There's ocean there. I don't know if it's if it's a beach. I'm assuming they have a beach.
Have you done the drive before?
I've gone to Portland when I was about 7. I don't think I've actually gone to Adelaide I've gone to the border of South Australia, so I'm not familiar. So good luck.
Great.
I've gone to Mount Gambier. Yeah. And I've got family in Horsham, so I've been to Horsham a little bit.
All right, so I guess we'll just find out along the way.
Yeah, but if anyone has the perfect stop off, like what's a good bakery is really
there's a lot of nice.
I just want to know where a good bakery is between Melbourne and Adelaide. And
that might be a good one.
Go to the bakery.
If you're heading towards Horsham, the Great Western Hotel, very small town but lovely food.
Yeah,
nice little stop. So.
Boom.
Okay, so that's lunch. Is that like smack bang in the middle?
Not quite.
Depends if we want to go to Horsham though.
It's probably about 3 hours from Melbourne, so it wouldn't quite be halfway.
Okay.
Yeah, open to suggestions, but that's a good one. Yeah.
We'll figure something out.
Let us know.
But mostly just how do you deal with being stuck with a coworker for 7 days straight? But we are doing some content there, so you'll probably see us
if anyone's over there.
Around Adelaide Oval or around Adelaide or up at the Barossa, so come say hi. The other big thing we're doing is a treasure hunt, which I wanted to call gathering at
we haven't got
Gather
a great
Round.
Name. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, really.
We'll figure it out. Did you want to outline what it is we're hunting?
So we're gonna be tasked with about 4 or 5 things that we have to kind of find over there.
Yeah.
I think one of them is just like a footy fan that looks like a player. Yeah. He's a nice little lookalike. One that I'm looking forward to is a player badge. So, pretty much every player has their little player badge that you can find. We're going to throw some darts at a dartboard, and that's kind of decide who we have to find, which player's badge we have to find. So it's going to be interesting if we get a big name player or an SA player. That's going to be a bit easier to get while we're over there. But if it's like Fremantle player and they're up in the Barossa, I think they're there the day we're up there though, because usually they have the marquees outside the games for those teams. So it's going to be quite tricky if we find a player where we're not near their ground, or if it's just a really rogue player that we just they're not even going to have badges for. So that's another one. What else did we have on there?
in terms of the items to
Yeah.
search. So we're going to also try and find the best and the best worst footy merch available.
Yep.
Which
So
I
like
think
those hats or those jerseys they had last year with every team. One of those.
Yeah.
dreadful.
Something that
like
doesn't
I
have-
regret
yeah.
not buying one of those shirts
Yeah.
that had every
That's
club
right. It was
on
like-
them.
doesn't
Yeah.
have to be gather round related, but yeah, if there's like just a shocking,
Just
you know,
any bad, good, bad
yeah,
footy merch. We're also trying to find the rarest South Australian specific food.
rarest or just like
Pie floater or whatever
weirdest.
it is.
Oh, he tried a pie
best.
floater last
Yeah.
year, and it was
It was essentially a pie
Not
and pea soup.
appetizer.
It was bad.
but then we are open to suggestions. If anyone has like a kind of good little thing we might have to find, we might consider it.
Yeah,
Um,
specifically South Australian stuff.
Yeah, detour it up to the NT. First person to find Ayers
Find a
Rock wins.
discarded mullet or something.
Yeah, but I feel like South Australia is the only state that has really specific stuff to them.
Yeah,
Because like if you went
Or
to Western
Queensland.
Australia, like what's a Western Australian food apart from like I don't know, sea salt or a jar?
I don't know. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, we did the pie floater. We ticked that off. Well, you ticked that off last year. I'm happy I didn't have to do
Yeah,
that.
there are some things we've googled like frog cakes.
Frog
is that a
cakes?
thing? Frog? Have you
Yeah,
heard of that?
it was a frog cake
I
or
haven't
something.
heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about
We've
it.
got
to be
Hike's
honest.
chocolate, so I'll just go to the chocolate tier and find something there.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Anyway, so that's our gather around
Yeah, we're
treasure
gonna
hunt the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna have a video up on which player badges we have to find sometime this week. So yeah, you can head over to our socials or our YouTube page to find that video.
Cool. Exciting. Right. Moving on to round 5.
4?
Round 4.
To be fair, it's pretty much gotten me every time. Like the amount of times
Opening
I'm looking
rounds is
at
stuff that
opening round, and I'm looking at the VFL, and that's always a week behind. And then I think
Yeah.
the NRL's a week ahead.
Talent League.
Current round, you can just call it.
Yeah.
This week.
To the next round. All right.
Yeah.
So what are we all looking forward to? We're not doing tips. What game are you going to be watching, Daz?
Well, I mean, it starts with a pretty mouth-watering one. Collingwood and Carlton. The Blues struggling. Collingwood have had the week off. That's crunch time for the Blues. I mean, 0-4 almost. I know they made the finals from like 4-8 or something a couple of years back, but it's a long way back from there for them. And Collingwood certainly aren't going to make it easy. Both the matches last year were pretty tight. Yeah, so that's intriguing. And then probably the last one of the round too, Freo and the Dogs.
Yeah.
Like both of them. And yeah, just looking at the fixture, there's a million. So I won't touch on the others because I'm sure they'll get a mention. But Gold Coast Adelaide is interesting.
Yeah, that's the one I've circled. As fascinating as Thursday night will be, this is going to be a really cool test of where these two clubs stand, and we could get a very, very tight contest. If we see a blowout, it's going to make for plenty of headlines about one side and the other. With if one's a pretender, it's in Queensland.
I was going to say Metricon.
So it's Gold Coast's first game at home for the year as well, obviously because they had their opening round game pushed back and they've been on the road and then had the bye and then on the road again. So it's going to be if their home form kind of holds up, it's going to put them in good stead. I'll be fascinated to see what the crowd's like a real buzz around the Suns from a media point of view. And it'd be great to see I don't think it's going to be a sellout, but a pretty strong crowd to get behind them up in Queensland. So that's the game I've circled. And if I'm tipping I can't actually. To be fair, it's going to be quite tight. I might give Adelaide the edge though.
Yeah.
As much as I've been talking about the Suns, I think I'm going to give Adelaide the edge.
Well, they the big thing on them is traveling. I mean, both these teams really, but how much do they kick against Essendon when they travel to the MCG? So like, I'd sort of, it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up at an away game. Callum?
Well, you guys pretty much touched on all the main ones. I'm curious though. I'm curious about North Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah.
Like North Melbourne, they gave a solid effort against Adelaide, I thought, until maybe the last. It sort of went the way everyone expected. North Melbourne fight for a bit and then Adelaide pull away. And then they beat Melbourne last week and Melbourne were competitive against the Giants. So this will be a really good test. They're at home, which is helpful for them. So I think it'll be a good test for them. If they can pull that off, that'll be really good signs for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, pretty much repeating what Darren said, we are aligned on this episode. Yeah.
Right.
But the Fremantle Western Bulldogs, like Western Bulldogs are, to me, just the most interesting team at the moment, just with their outs and how they've been traveling this year. So, and Fremantle are just disappointing, and I had very high hopes for them. So I'm curious to see how that one goes. But
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for this week of the Hit Out. Subscribe. Thank you. What are we plugging?
Do Craft the Draft. We've this week's filmed the best prospects to look forward to for the year ahead. So that's one for those kind of draft nuts that want to keep tabs on the who, what, and where. And we've also got some fun little top fives heading into another season. And then even next week, we'll have all the club type prospects. So if you're kind of keen to know the father, sons, and academy boys that your club needs to keep tabs on this year, you can look out for that one in the next week or so as well. So a little bit coming out for Craft the Draft.
Yep.
In our draft leg of footy analysis.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you guys for coming on. See you next week.
See you.